Some honorable mentions before we start: League of Legends, Apex Legends, Black Ops 1, Skyrim, Mario 64, Devil May Cry 3, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, Fossil Fighters, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat was probably number 11 on this list, Batman Arkham Asylum, Persona 5, Undertale was probably number 12, Borderlands 2, both the Insomniac Spider-Man games, and probably a ton of other games that I'm forgetting about. These are all games that I genuinely love playing. Some love-hate League of Legends, but just didn't quite crack my top 10. They're all still great games, though. Play them all. If there's games that you don't like or that you do like that aren't on this honorable mention list or on my top 10, please, I ask you to feel free to comment your top 10 list down below. I'd love to hear everything you guys are thinking. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. So my gaming life is very much split into two halves. We had, I got, my first ever console was a PS2, and I played a ton of PlayStation games when I was younger. When the Xbox 360 came out, I switched to Xbox, and the PS4 came out. The PS2 and Xbox 360 eras were very different from my experience once the PS4 came out, and I played a game called Bloodborne. That changed a lot of how I viewed video games. I started playing games a lot more, started enjoying games a lot more. It's also around the time I started my YouTube channel, so a ton of history going back. And I've made top 10 lists before, not really made them into videos, although I think I did one time a long time ago. But the list has changed constantly as games have come out more and more. The top two games have pretty much stayed consistent, but everything else tends to swap in and out. And I'm just really excited to share my top 10 with you guys. And like I said in the opening section, if you guys disagree or agree, I'd love to hear about it in the comments, hear your opinions, anything like that. But without further ado, let's hop into the list. So for number 10, we have Spyro the Dragon, the original one for the PS1. Now, I will admit that 80% of the reason this game is on here is because it is the first video game I ever played. Yes, I recognize the games like Mario 64, Persona 5, Undertale. These are all games that are probably objectively better than the original Spyro the Dragon, but the game holds so much nostalgia for me. Playing that game all the time when I was younger, I just had so much fun with it. I didn't realize at the time when I was first playing it that Spyro the Dragon 1 was a PS1 game and we had a PS2, which meant that since we were using a PS2, I could not save on the PS2 memory card because, again, it was a PS1 game. So I can recall so many times that I would be playing that game and wouldn't turn off the console because I knew that it wouldn't save. We'd buy new memory cards. We didn't know what was going on. My family wasn't exactly the techiest people in the world. So just so much time of playing the game, trying to get to the final boss. I had never beaten it when I was younger. Thankfully, with the use of totally legitimate hardware that you can download to your computer, I have played and beaten Spyro the Dragon in my adult times, and also they came out with the amazing Reignited trilogy that came out a few years ago, and I played through all of Spyro 1 and 2 as well back then. But Spyro 1 will always hold probably the number 10. No matter how much this list changes as time goes on, Spyro will always be in this top 10 because of the fact that it is the first video game I ever played, and so I just hold such an attachment to it. It's fun, don't get me wrong, it's an incredible game. Really fun platforming elements, puzzles. 100% of that game is incredibly satisfying to do. You know, looking for every little thing in every single level is just the sort of rush that got me into wanting to complete games more and more, get all the trophies, stuff like that as I got older. And Spyro 1 is basically where it all started. Coming in at number 9 is the original Outlast. Not Outlast 2. I do enjoy Outlast 2 a lot, but the original Outlast was one of those games. I think it was the first horror game I ever really played. It was it probably still is the scariest game I've ever played. I adore this game. It's creepy, it's gross in a lot of places. It honestly appeals to a lot of the stuff I like in my horror, and it's just interesting to go through. It doesn't have the most replayability in the world. Once you've beaten the game once, there's almost no reason to play it again. Honestly, the only reason I've played it again was because of showing it to Alan, and we had a lot of fun with that. Alan really enjoyed this game, especially when you add on the Whistleblower DLC, which just adds some insane revelations to the story at the end of it. Just in general, Outlast, like I said, it's terrifying. You really feel like, I feel like something a lot of horror games nowadays don't get right is that feeling of just pure helplessness, but still making the threats threatening even though, like, there's some games where you can be helpless, but the threat isn't really that scary because it's like, oh, I'm a ghost, and I jump scare you every so often. And it's not like that. Like, you have sections where you're just walking through exploring, and you have sections where you've got to hide and stuff. I think it does horror better than 99% of games that have come out since it and that have come out before it. I love Outlast so much. I think it's a damn near perfect horror game, and it's my second favorite horror game that I've ever played. Coming at number 8, we are jumping back a little bit again to Far Cry 3. Now, I can't fully explain to you why I love this game so much. I'm not a big shooter person. Black Ops 1 was on my honorable mentions list, but that's mostly just because I adore the story of Black Ops 1. And I love the story of Far Cry 3 as well. But I think it's a mixture of this insane story that they're doing. The story of Far Cry 3 is amazing. It's written so well. The ending is a little bit iffy because, like, it gives you a choice, and you're sitting here like, why would I ever choose to stay with this random woman I haven't met, even though the whole point of my whole journey has been to save my friends? Whatever, spoilers, sorry. But the rest of it throughout it, as your character changes so dramatically after his brother dies in the opening section, and you're getting all these tattoos, and you're going around this island, and you have to kill people, and just, again, like I said, the open world aspect of it, and getting to upgrade yourself and your weapons and all, it's just, Far Cry 3 is one of those games that I could go back and replay anytime at any point in my life and probably find just as much fun in it as I did when I first played it. I need to replay it again, honestly. I just don't have an easy way to do that, unfortunately, and I haven't played any of the Far Cry games since, which I may be missing out, I don't know. But Far Cry 3 is always going to hold a special place in my heart, not just for having this really amazing open world with also guns, but the amazing story that gripped me so much even when I was 15 until now when I'm 24. I think it's awesome. Coming at number 7 is your typical sandbox game, except it's not Minecraft, it is Terraria. Minecraft is great, don't get me wrong. If Minecraft's in your top 10 favorite games of all time, awesome. I totally understand that. Minecraft was one of the first games I ever got on my very first computer, so I absolutely understand if you love Minecraft. But for me, I am not a creative person when it comes to building or just creating art in general. So Minecraft, a lot of what I feel like is that game is about, like, sure, they've added more combat stuff. You have, new bosses, new ways to kill stuff, whatever. But at the end of the day, I feel like Minecraft is still very much a creative-based game where you're meant to build a lot and do a lot of stuff with building. Whereas Terraria is focused heavily on fighting and boss progression, and it treats it almost more like an RPG, and that is the sort of stuff that gets me. I've loved Terraria for a long time. It is still the game on my Steam that has the most hours put into it because I'm so addicted to that game. And once the Tmod loader, which is the integrated mod thing for Terraria, once that was introduced onto Steam, the obsession just grew. I've probably played through all of Terraria about 40 times, beaten it every single time, done it multiple times with mods, multiple times by myself, with friends. Any way you can name Terraria, I've played it, and there's still more mods to discover, and they're still updating the game, and it just keeps getting better and better, and it's just everything I love in a sandbox game. I want to fight. I want to get stronger for a long time. I want something that's going to take me a long time to keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and upgrade new modes and unlock new enemies and these insane boss fights. It's just everything I could want in a game like this, and that's why anytime another sandbox game comes out, I just go back to Terraria, because 3D voxel games are fun, but they're not what I'm looking for, and Terraria always is what I'm looking for, and that's why it's number 7. Number 6 is probably the second most controversial opinion on this list. I had to choose a Pokemon game because Pokemon is probably my favorite video game series right now. It's a three-way tie between this and two others, which we'll talk about later. Pokemon's probably up there. I love Pokemon so much. And for a very, very long time, Pokemon Black was my favorite Pokemon game because I loved the story. I loved all the Pokemon too. My favorite Pokemon comes from that region, Crocodile. But I also just loved the story so much. I thought N was such a cool character. I thought the region was awesome. I thought it was paced really well. A lot of awesome stuff going on with Pokemon Black. And then 2 years ago, they came out with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now I know that a lot of people have problems with modern Pokemon games in general. Basically, ever since the switch to 3D, there's always been something people find to complain about. And I am along that same line. I thought Pokemon X and Y were kind of boring. I thought Pokemon Sun and Moon were absolute garbage. And Sword and Shield had some fun stuff. I really enjoyed Sword and Shield a lot, but I feel like it still had some issues that hadn't brought it up to the heights Pokemon could be. And they came out with Scarlet and Violet. Now, I do think there's still a lot of problems with Scarlet and Violet. I think the open world is not Game Freak's strong suit. Like, I think they did really well with Legends Arceus, but in Scarlet and Violet, I feel like the open world leaves a lot to be desired with just the way it's laid out and stuff. I think that the fact that there's not a clear-cut way to go about your gym battles or just the stories in general makes it a bit difficult to know what you're supposed to be doing and when you're supposed to be doing it. But at the end of the day, no Pokemon game has ever made me cry before until Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Because the stories that are told in that game, like, I didn't even know Pokemon could tell stories that good. Don't get me wrong. N is amazing. N's entire arc with Father Ghetsis is amazing. But Nemona's kind of story about being this insanely prodigious battler and having no challengers, and you finally come along and are able to stand up to her, and that brings her joy. You have Penny's, in my opinion, kind of boring quest. We're not going to talk about Penny. And then you have Arven. And you got to understand, if any of you watched the channel for a long time before we did the whole channel reset about a year or two ago, you would know that I had a dog named Carly. I had that dog. That was the first ever dog I ever had, and she was very close to me. And unfortunately, about 4 years ago, we had to put her down because she was suffering from cancer, and there was no way to cure her. And seeing Arven go through everything he went through to save his Mabosstiff, who was just basically dying, and watching him start off as this really standoffish, seemingly rude character, and turn into a video game character that I would literally die for because of the effort he put in to save his Pokemon, that should count for something. And along that line, Scarlet Violet also has a ton of really sick Pokemon. It has 2 insanely good DLCs with great stories. Kieran's entire arc is chef's kiss. I love it. But just in general, and then the story when you go down to Area 0 with Arven's dad or mom, if you're playing Scarlet, is just so good. And the whole time I was playing it and playing the story, I was blown away. Because like I said, I didn't even know Game Freak could do something like this. I didn't know they were this good. And they showed me, hey, we can write stories and we can write them pretty well. And they did. They did it more than well. I think Arven has one of my favorite character arcs in gaming. I'm not even going to lie. I love Arven's character. I love it. And it still has all the great stuff I love about Pokemon. As people have said, terrestrializing, while it may be kind of a boring mechanic, it's the best competitive mechanic we've ever had. And who knows, maybe my mind will change when Pokemon Legends ZA comes out later. Maybe that'll be my new favorite game, because guess what? Megas are back, and Megas are great. But for now, it's Pokemon Violet. Coming at number 5 is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Yeah, that's right. It's not Ocarina of Time, you nerds. To be fair, I've never played Ocarina of Time. For a long time, the Zelda slot on my list was taken up by Majora's Mask because I loved Majora's Mask. But Breath of the Wild was literally a game that I was both so excited for and loved so much that I almost flunked out of my senior year of high school because I was playing it too much. And this game, I really like open world games, and you'll come to see that a bit later in the list even more. Like we talked about Far Cry 3, we talked about Terraria, and we talked about Pokemon Violet, and now Breath of the Wild. I love open world games. I love having a ton of stuff to explore and find, and throwing that into a Zelda game where you're just thrown into the game and told, hey, figure it out. I loved that. I was insanely obsessed with that game. I think the combat, while simple, is incredibly fun. I think all the tools and the unique ways you can use that make it's such a creative game. And Tears of the Kingdom tried to replicate that success by adding even more stuff you can do. I think that Nintendo kind of jumped a bit too far when it came to Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom was fun. I love Tears of the Kingdom, honestly, a lot. I still haven't beaten it. And I think that's the mark of what the difference is, because Breath of the Wild, no matter how long that game took me to do, I still wanted to keep playing and keep going until I finished it. Tears of the Kingdom wasn't the same, but Breath of the Wild just always made me want more. The story is heart-wrenching in all the best ways, and I just think it's a perfect Zelda game. And now for number 4 is the second newest game on this list. The newest game is actually number 1. Yep, I am a product of my environment. I'm sorry. But for number 4, we are coming in with Inscription. Now, Inscription is actually a game that, luckily enough, unlike a lot of these other games that are on here, I can pull my own footage from, because we just very recently played through the entire game on the channel. And Inscription hits a whole other itch I have on video games, which I love roguelikes. There aren't a lot of roguelikes in the honorable mentions, but I do want to add Binding of Isaac and Hades into those honorable mentions, because those games are amazing. But Inscription hit me in a different way, because not only is the gameplay super fun, I love the card building aspects, I like card games too, but the story is probably one of the most nuts things I have ever played in my life. Having you follow this guy who just found this video game, and it's a freaking the whole game is meant to cover up some like launch codes that could blow up a nuclear bomb under the Germany, I think. Like, what are you talking about? And the whole time you're playing cards against a robot, and it's nuts. It's literally nuts. It's made by the same people who made games like Pony Island, so like obviously it's nuts, and obviously it has this edge of conspiracy in the background. But I love it so much. Inscription, I never get tired of it. The first time I played it, I was blown away by the story and the gameplay. And then once I was done with the game and it opened up Casey's mod, I got addicted again, because now it was a true roguelike, and you had all these different game modes that you had to beat and all these different difficulties. And it was only until, it honestly wasn't until we went to replay Inscription for the channel that I realized that it was one of my favorite games ever, because I think that I think there's nothing wrong with it. I say that. In the main story, the section where you are playing the original version of Inscription, I think is a bit slow and also very cheesy. Like, you could just build that bone deck and absolutely destroy everyone that comes your way. But besides that, it's nearly a perfect game. Coming at number 3 is, I mentioned when I was talking about Outlast that I had one more favorite horror game, and this is it. Now, some of you may not consider this horror, but my number 3 is the Resident Evil 2 remake, because guess what? It combines two of my favorite things, horror and replayability. I think replayability is something that is very important for video games for me. I tend to be pretty picky when it comes to games, which is why a lot of these options may seem weird to a lot of people. But when I find a game I like, I want to be able to play that game a lot. Terraria, I've played a ton of times. Breath of the Wild, I've played multiple times. Inscription, I've played multiple times. Outlast, I've played twice. Spyro, I've played probably 10 times. Far Cry 3, I've played a ton. And this game, I loved it so much that I didn't mind that for trophies I had to beat this game like 16 times. I didn't mind that I got to the point where I memorized the route and was doing speedruns of it. I didn't mind how difficult the game could be on the hardest difficulties. I didn't mind any of that. I was just having pure, unadulterated fun. The fact that you can technically experience the game two different ways, having Leon A, Claire B, or Claire A, Leon B, makes it fun in its own way. But again, the difficulties and stuff, I love it so much. I know a lot of people don't like the RE2 remake because I feel like it took away a lot of what made the original Resident Evil games scary. But I mean, call me, a product of the new era, but I don't really find fixed camera angles very scary. I played the RE1 HD remaster, and I don't think it's very scary at all. I've played Code Veronica. I've played the original RE1. I've played the original RE2, and I don't think that fixed camera angles makes the game scarier. I think it maybe adds a bit more tension in some places, but I just feel like when you have a loose camera, you can do more with, like, you can still hide stuff around a corner if you have a non-fixed camera angle. You understand that, right? Like, I don't want to go off on a tangent about this, but just because it's a remake, I don't think that makes it any worse. I think that the RE2 remake is exactly how you should do a remake. Is you take an old game that had a very great skeleton, but maybe a lot of limitations from the hardware, and beef it up to modern standards and make it better. And I think that's what they did. I think, obviously, the RE3 remake is a completely different situation. They made that game more shorter. They took away a lot of what made that game the game. Like, it almost feels like it's a different game. But this game, it feels like you're playing the original game, just better. At least that's how it feels to me. Coming at number 2, what used to be the number 1 game, but I think I've woken up a little bit, is Kingdom Hearts 2. Now, this is the other one that I feel like is going to be very controversial. One, because Kingdom Hearts is an incredibly divisive series. A lot of people think it's garbage. And guess what? I actually don't really blame you that much. But Kingdom Hearts has a very, very special place to me. It was my favorite game series for probably about 10 years. I still really love the games. This is another one of those game series that genuinely made me cry. So it's not even like just that the stories make me cry. They have. But when I loaded up Kingdom Hearts 0.2, which, yeah, don't question the title too much. I know it's stupid. When I loaded up Kingdom Hearts 0.2 and I watched that cutscene, I actually cried. Legitimately cried the first day I went to go play that game. And it wasn't even one of the main games. I think that the story, while it's absolutely batshit crazy, don't get me wrong, the story, half the time, it's convoluted. I'm not going to be one of those people that say it doesn't make sense, because unfortunately I think it does. I just think there's a lot of stuff you have to consider to make it make sense. But I don't think it's I don't think it's a story that doesn't make sense. I think there's stuff that makes sense. It's just convoluted. But at the end of the day, I love the story of these games. And add on to that, the game that, in my opinion, had the most streamlined and satisfying combat, that being 2, I think is what puts it above the other ones. Kingdom Hearts 1 I think has probably one of the better stories. Birth by Sleep has the best story of all the Kingdom Hearts games. Kingdom Hearts 3 has a slightly better story than Kingdom Hearts 1, but I think its gameplay, it's weird because they added more stuff, but it makes it feel more repetitive at the same time. And I don't know how to fully explain that. Like, I don't know, it's weird. Kingdom Hearts 3 just didn't hit me the same way that Kingdom Hearts 2 still does to this day. And hopefully that'll change when Kingdom Hearts 4 comes out, when I'm dead. But Kingdom Hearts 2 will always just hold that place to me where it is. I think it has the best gameplay of all the games. I do. Like I said, Birth by Sleep has a better story, but I think this one has the best gameplay. And I think when you're considering replayability, like, as much as I love story, when you're considering replayability of a game, you have to look at gameplay more than story. And that's why Kingdom Hearts 2 is not only my number 2, but it's also my favorite Kingdom Hearts game of all time. And coming in at number 1, we have a 3-way tie. Now, I will say, on the list that I wrote down, I only have one game written down. But to me, it's basically a 3-way tie. And that is between Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. Now, again, on the list, I have Elden Ring written down, and I'm only going to be talking about Elden Ring. But it's genuinely almost impossible for me to choose between these 3 games, because I think they each have things that make them amazing. Bloodborne has resurged in popularity in my own mind after doing my blindfolded run of it. I want to do so many more blindfolded runs of that game because it just I felt so good when I did that. And so it just made me appreciate the game even more. Dark Souls 3 has probably the best boss fight ever created by From Software, and being Slave Knight Gale, and just a lot of cool bosses and sick looking areas. I know a lot of people who like Dark Souls 1 say Dark Souls 3 is just worse Dark Souls 1, and I think those people are on cracks. I think Dark Souls 1 is the most boring game I've ever played in my life. I think Dark Souls 2 is way better than Dark Souls 1, but Dark Souls 3 just holds a... that game is ridiculous to me. It's so good. And then Elden Ring. Now, for a long time, I did not consider Elden Ring on the same level as Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. But as I've been playing through it the second time for the whole Souls game series, and as I've been trying to get it out before the DLC comes out, or finish it before the DLC comes out, I think I've realized why it's probably the best From Software game ever made. You know, yes, the length of that game makes it difficult to replay. I fully understand that, and I think you're correct if you feel that way. Like, a lot of the reason people love Dark Souls or Bloodborne is because those games are pretty short, in relatively short compared to other games, and they're very streamlined experiences. Whereas Elden Ring, open world games are always hard to have replayability, but I have had so much fun playing the game a second time, getting everything a second time, exploring all the areas a second time. And that game is just dripping with character and atmosphere. Every single NPC you meet is so cool, and you want to hear all their stories. There's so many heartbreaking or invigorating character quests. Like, I just finished Selen's questline, and it still breaks my heart every time I do it. Millicent's questline is insane. Dung Eaters is crazy. All the Volcano Manor stuff. What the hell is even going on with Tanith, bro? There's just so much cool stuff going on. And then the bosses, bro. Margit and Godric, two of your first main bosses you fight. Awesome. Then you have Rodon, the chattiest Chad. Loved his horse so much he learned gravity magic so he could ride it. You have Renala, which is half gimmick boss, half very annoying keep away boss, but on one of the best arenas From Software has ever made. You have Rykard, the best gimmick fight that From Software has ever made. I don't care what you say. It's better than Yorm, and it's better than the Stormweaver or Storm Ruler, whatever he's called, from Demon Souls, because they gave your movesets look cooler, and you're fighting a big snake. It's awesome. And then you have Godfrey, and you have Malenia, and you have Malekith, and you have the dragon fights, and you have Placid Dusax, and Radagon is awesome. We don't talk about Elden Beast, but Radagon is an amazing fight, and it's so consistent throughout. Mountaintop of the Giants is a bit iffy. Consecrated Snowfield is very iffy. The Halig Tree, kind of annoying until you get to Malenia. Farum Azula, why do the enemies do that much damage? But still, for most of the game, it just feels incredible. And it's my favorite game ever. So yeah, that is going to end the top 10 video games, or my top 10 favorite video games list. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm sure there's a lot of disagreement. My tier lists tend to go over pretty well, as you can see from the Dark Souls 1 and 2 boss tier lists. I'm being sarcastic. And the Dark Souls 3 one as well. I don't remember, that one got a lot of views. I don't think I got a lot of comments. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed, be sure to like this video and also subscribe for more stuff like this. Ton of cool stuff. As this video is going up, I am actually... I believe it's the day after I got back from Guatemala. So I actually think this video is coming out the day before the DLC drops, which is for Elden Ring, which, oh my god, oh my gosh, it's 12 days away as I'm recording this, and it literally comes out tomorrow as you guys are seeing it. I will be streaming the Elden Ring DLC the day it comes out. Not sure what time, hopefully like around 1 p.m. CST, but I'm not 100% sure. I may still be recovering from being overseas in Guatemala. But we will be streaming it pretty much every day as long as we can. And that's going to be a ton of fun. Also, like I said, if you want to drop your top 10 games list of all time in the comments below, you can do that as well. Also, check out other stuff we're doing on the channel. We're playing through Sekiro right now. We're going through Pokemon Radical Red, playing the Resident Evil 4 remake, which that has been very fun, don't get me wrong. That has the potential at the moment, I will admit, to be on the same level as RE2, although I do think RE4 has a bit too many let's throw 50 enemies at you at once scenarios, which is kind of the only reason why I'm sort of on it compared to RE2. RE2 feels more controlled. But we're not going to talk about that anyway. One more time, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. and I will see you tomorrow for, I think tomorrow is Radical Red. So, and then again, the Elden Ring DLC stream. So, see you guys then. Bye!